Welcome to Live Interactive English. I'm your host, Nina.
And I'm Mike, and we are here with you guys today and the beginning of another wonderful two-day article about a land down under. Now, when I say down under, that's just another way of saying Australia. I'm going down under. I'm going to Australia. And earlier we were talking, and our friend here, Nina, was saying she's always wanted to go.
Yes.
She's always wanted to go and have a date with a kangaroo, carry a koala, play some cricket. What is it about Australia that's always interested you?
Well, actually, I always wanted to try the working holiday in Australia. Yes, as a Taiwanese or a Portuguese, you actually can do that.
Okay.
And, you know, a lot of people go there to save money, especially if you're coming from Taiwan, because they pay quite well.
I see.
But then again, it's also very expensive, right?
Yeah, it is a little expensive there, but you can make some good money, so at least you'll be able to buy the things you need, or you can go there, work really, really hard, save all your money, and come back to Taiwan. That's what a lot of people would do.
Yeah, so a lot of Taiwanese people do that. But I didn't end up going. I went to England instead. But, you know, I still have a chance to do that soon.
Absolutely. Or, of course, you can always go there as a tourist as well. And that's kind of what we'll be doing. We'll be going to Sydney, which, of course, is the biggest city in Australia. Not the capital city, but the biggest city where the most people live. Now, a lot of people know Sydney. They know that famous Harbour Bridge that you can climb, and right next to the Harbour Bridge on Sydney Harbour, one of the most beautiful harbors in the world, they have that amazing opera house.
Yes.
It kind of looks like those sailing ships. A lot of you might see it on the news in December 31st, New Year's Day. They always have a big fireworks show there. And of course, they had the Olympics in Sydney, 20 or 30 years ago. So it's a very, very popular tourist destination with a lot of things people might know, like the bridge and the opera house. But for today and tomorrow, we are going to be exploring the other things in Sydney that people maybe don't know about.
Ooh, exciting.
Very interesting. So let's get to it. Beyond the harbour, Sydney, off the beaten track. When you hear the name Sydney, the first image that probably comes to mind is blue skies and the Sydney Opera House. While this unusually shaped building is no doubt one of the most widely known symbols of Sydney, it is far from the only thing worth discovering here. Close to the Sydney Opera House is the Rocks, one of the city's original districts, which dates back to Australia's past as a British penal colony. The Argyle Cut, for example, is a tunnel that was built by prisoners in the 19th century and still passes through the center of the old neighborhood. All right, here we are with our article, Beyond the Harbour, Sydney off the beaten track. The harbour, of course, is the water with Sydney all around it. Sydney Harbour, very beautiful. You'll love it. And when we go off the beaten track or off the beaten path, this is kind of like when you're in hiking in the woods. Here's the track. It's been beaten down. It's been flattened, so it's easier to go on. If you go off that, you're kind of wandering into areas that most people might not know. Now, here, of course, in Sydney, we're not actually walking or hiking through the woods. If you say I'm going off the beaten track, that just means I'm going to places maybe tourists don't really know so well. The local people might know it, but for tourists, when they have the top 10 things to do in Sydney, they might not have these places on those lists. So if you want to have a really interesting, special, and unique holiday, it might be good to go off the beaten track a bit and see things that most people don't have a chance to see.
Yeah, sounds like fun.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, let's get into the article. When you hear the name Sydney, the first image that probably comes to mind is blue skies and the Sydney Opera House, right? That's what you see in the pictures everywhere. So opera is a play with singing and music. So the opera house is where the opera happens, right? For example, singing opera requires a powerful voice.
Yeah, Figaro. Absolutely. There you go. Well done. Now, it's a little different from musicals, right? If you think of Phantom of the Opera or something like that, that's a musical, though they talk and sing.
Yeah.
But with operas, the music is often older and it's only singing. They don't have those sort of talking, acting scenes. They just sing, and usually they're very big and very loud.
Yeah.
But also very, very skilled. Back to our article, it says, while this unusually shaped building, the Sydney Opera House, is no doubt one of the most widely known symbols of Sydney, it is far from the only thing worth discovering here. That is very, very cool. Okay. And yeah, it's a very widely known symbol. It has that shape of like 3 shells kind of thing. You know, there's a few cities in the world. Taipei 101 for Taipei, the Eiffel Tower for Paris. And if you have that shape, a lot of people, even without seeing the picture of the building, just the shape of the building,
yes.
a lot of people would think, hey, yeah, that's Sydney, yeah, that's the Opera House, absolutely. But we're going to be looking at other stuff after we check in with our good friend Hanny.
Okay. Hello, 大家好，我是 Hanny。今天的课文标题是 Beyond the Harbor, Sydney off the beaten track. 走出海港之外，雪梨的私房景点。那标题的 off the beaten track 就是指偏僻的、人迹罕至的。当我们一听到雪梨，脑海中浮现的第一个画面可能就是雪梨歌剧院。那这一座造型独特的建筑是雪梨最广为人知的象征之一。不过，雪梨还有很多地方值得探索哦。我们先看看单字 opera。opera 表示歌剧，那 Sydney Opera House 就是雪梨歌剧院。这边还有2个重点。第一个 come to mind 是表达被想到、浮现在脑海。这个片语的主词是所想到的人或是事物。那么 come 可以替换成 spring 或者是 leap。举例来说 ，What comes to mind when you think of China？ 当你想到中国时，脑中浮现的是什么呢？那第2个重点 worth 它表示值得什么的，有什么价值的。常用的句型是主词 be worth 加上名词或动名词，表达值得怎么样，或者是价值多少金额。例如 The TV show is worth watching。那个电视节目值得一看。或是 That old car isn't worth much money。那辆老爷车不值多少钱。好，那接着就回到课文里面一起探索雪梨的私房景点吧。Okay, continuing with Sydney. Close to the Sydney Opera House is the Rocks, one of the city's original districts, which dates back to Australia's past as a British penal colony. Okay.
Interesting.
So it's very close by to the Opera House,
yep.
right?
I guess you wouldn't have to walk very far. Of course, now this would be the middle of the big modern city of Sydney. But if you went there, 100, 150 years ago, this is one of the oldest districts of the city. Most of what you see today wouldn't be there. But in this area of the Rocks, where there are buildings now, there would have been buildings back then, a long time ago. So a district is kind of like a neighborhood or an area. When we take a city especially, we can break it up into smaller areas, right?
Yes.
Here in Taipei, we have the sort of Taipei 101 district, the Ximending district, the Wanhua district, that kind of thing. So it just makes it a little easier to understand what's in the city, what parts of the city are different, how old they are, that kind of thing. The sentence for the word district, the old district is full of narrow streets because, yes, a long time ago they didn't have cars.
Yeah.
So the streets were more narrow. Yes, and we have another place that I've never heard of next in our article. The Argyle Cut, for example, is a tunnel that was built by prisoners in the 19th century and still passes through the center of the old neighborhood. As we mentioned, the Rocks goes back to the time when Sydney was a British, Australia actually, was a British penal colony, meaning it was a big prison. If you were arrested for a crime in England at that time, they wouldn't put you in jail. They would put you on a boat, send you all the way to Australia, where you probably can't get back, and you would live there kind of like a prison. So these prisoners were used to build the first buildings and the first sort of baby city of Sydney, 100, 200, 250 years ago or so.
And it started all with criminals.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Hanny and learn more about it in a bit. 第一站，我们来到临近雪梨歌剧院的岩石区，那这是雪梨最早开发的其中一区，可以追溯到澳洲以前作为英国罪犯流放地的时期。那么 district 这个名词就表示地区区域，它常常是指这种行政区啊，或者是商业区等等。而文中的 penal colony 它表示罪犯流放地，其中的 penal 是形容刑罚的、惩戒的。这边还有一个重点是 date 当动词可以表达推断点点点形成的时间，或者是确定点点点的年代。我们现在要表达说某事始于什么，或者是回溯至什么，可以用到以下的句型是主词 date back 加一段时间，或是主词 date back to 加上过去的时间点。例如 This tradition dates back 700 years 这个传统可追溯至700年前。This tradition dates back to the Middle Ages 这个传统可追溯至中世纪。那介华课文中 Okay, thank you, Hanny. Now let's go to the second part and we'll be right back after the break.
The nearby Hyde Park Barracks was once used to house Sydney's convicts, but today the building serves as a museum, with exhibits that introduce visitors to the history of the modern city. After spending time in the rocks, why not take the short ferry ride up the coast to Manly? Despite being just across the water from Sydney's busy centre, Manly feels quite relaxed in comparison. The main beach draws swimmers and surfers, and the surrounding streets are lined with cafes and small stores. All right, so we've already visited the Sydney Opera House and the Harbour Bridge. Yeah, everyone goes there. But we've checked out the Rocks, which is one of the oldest districts of Sydney. We also checked out the Argyle Cut, which is probably still used today, a tunnel, a way to kind of get between some hills or mountains that was built by the prisoners who were the first white people, the first Western people, Europeans, to live in Australia hundreds of years ago. And we're staying on that sort of historical path, learning more about old Sydney as we get back to our article.
Okay. The nearby Hyde Park Barracks was once used to house Sydney's convicts, but today the building serves as a museum with exhibits that introduce visitors to the history of the modern city. Okay, so it's an exhibit. An exhibit is things shown in a museum or gallery. For example, the gold statue is the most famous exhibit in the museum. Okay, so now we have this place that's used as an exhibit for tourists.
A museum,
right?
Yeah, full of all these wonderful exhibits. There'll probably be old pictures from back in those days, maybe some of the chains that they used to use to chain up the prisoners, or the tools they used to use to make things like the Argyle Cut. So if you're interested in the history of Sydney the city, and it is a very interesting history, not a long one, but a very interesting one, that would be something to check out. Also worth checking out is everything our friend Hanny has to tell us. So let's go do that.
课文提到，附近的海德公园军营曾用来收容雪梨的囚犯，如今这座建筑是作为博物馆使用，馆内有展品向游客介绍这个现代城市的历史。好，单字 exhibit 名词，它表示展览品或是展览，而文中用到 house 在这边当及物动词，它有收容的意思，还用到 serve as 加名词，是表达充当什么，用来作为什么什么。那我们接着课文中。Okay, thank you, Hanny. Now let's learn more about this history.
Yes, indeed. So we've checked out the Rocks, the Argyle Cut, and the Hyde Park Barracks to learn about the history of Sydney and some of the first people who lived there, or at least the first European people who lived there. So now it's time to kind of get back out there, out into the fresh air, away from the museum, and maybe go on a little boat trip. How does that sound? It says, after spending time in the Rocks, why not take a short ferry ride up the coast too manly, all right? When someone makes a suggestion, they might say, hey, why not do this? You know, you might like that. Why not have Italian food for dinner? I think that might be good. So we're giving a suggestion, and here the suggestion is, yes, as I said, a little boat trip up the coast, up the sort of shoreline away from Sydney, maybe even outside of the harbor or to a different area of Sydney, up to a place called Manly. And we're doing this on a boat called a ferry. A ferry is a very special kind of boat. I mean, it's actually, it could be any kind of boat really, but it's a special kind of boat service because a ferry is kind of the boat version of a bus. It goes from here to there and from there to here and over and again and and in places where they have a lot of water, cities like, I don't know, San Francisco or Venice. I know in Vancouver they have a ferry as well. This type of system, this type of boat service, New York as well, and this type of boat service gets people all around the city, and many people will take a boat to get to work in the morning.
Yeah.
Like you might take a bus or a subway. The ferry just does that, bringing people from A to B and B to A on the water. Sometimes you can even put cars on ferries.
Yes, you
right?
can, yeah.
And you can go from one place to another with your car. For example, we could say the ferry leaves every hour for the island. So kind of like a bus, but they won't be as often as a bus, I'm sure, because of course they carry a lot of people. The Hong Kong ferry. That's one of my favorite.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so nice. So nice. All right, so what are we going to do in Manly?
All right, despite being just across the water from Sydney's busy center, Manly feels quite relaxed in comparison. Okay, so if you're in Sydney and you feel like there's just too much rush, too many tourists, you know, you want something more relaxed and laid back, maybe Manly is your option.
Okay, sounds pretty good. And what can we do in Manly? Well, it says the main beach draws swimmers and surfers, cool, and the surrounding streets are lined with cafes and small stores. Yeah, automatically it sounds much more relaxed, much more laid back, kind of a slower pace than downtown Sydney with its big office buildings and people rushing around. Manly Beach is one of the more well-known beaches in Sydney, along with Bondi Beach, of course. And there you can do the typical beach things. You can go swimming, you can go surfing, you can probably do some scuba diving or snorkeling, things like that. And when you're sick and tired of all that sun and sand and water and greatness outside, you can go to a cafe or a small store. It is surrounded by all those things.
Yes.
Wonderful things to do.
Yeah, so it's surrounded, meaning to be all around something. So we're surrounded by all of these things to do. Sounds like a fun time, right?
It does. Sounds great.
For example, tall pine trees surround the mountain cabin. Ooh,
Okay,
sounds
kinda
beautiful.
Make a circle around the cabin, like they're giving it a hug. Isn't that nice? All right, let's go over to Hanny. She is going to surround us with all sorts of wonderful new knowledge about English grammar and vocabulary. I can't wait!
课文接着建议我们搭乘短程的渡轮，沿海岸前往曼利。这个地方感觉相当悠闲。那它的主要海滩吸引了泳客跟冲浪客，周围的街道两旁则有咖啡简餐店跟小店。说到悠闲，老师们用到 laid back 就可以形容悠闲放松的。而在讲到水上活动时，老师也有提到 snorkeling 就是浮潜，还有 scuba diving 是水肺潜水。而课文单字 ferry 它表示渡轮、渡船 ，surround 这个动词表示环绕、围绕。文中是用现在分词 surrounding 来形容这个周围的或者是附近的。那我们接着回到课文中。
Okay, guys, that's all the time we have today. I was having such a good time.
Yeah.
And now here, well, I guess if we're going to spend overnight in Manly,
Yeah.
it's not so bad, right? We got surf, we got sand, we got sun, we got all these wonderful cafes, and we'll have you guys back to join us tomorrow. That's the best part, because we're not done being explorers off the beaten track in Sydney, finding you some of the cool things to see. And you know what? It would really be a mistake of ours if we went all the way to Australia and didn't check out some of the cute little animals.
That's true.
They have very interesting animals.
They do.
We'll be meeting them tomorrow, along with you. So let's come back and do that.
All right.
Take
Bye,
care.
guys.
Bye-bye. When you hear the name Sydney, the first image that probably comes to mind is blue skies and the Sydney Opera House. While this unusually shaped building is no doubt one of the most widely known symbols of Sydney, it is far from the only thing worth discovering here. Close to the Sydney Opera House is the Rocks, one of the city's original districts, which dates back to Australia's past as a British penal colony. The Argyle Cut, for example, is a tunnel that was built by prisoners in the 19th century and still passes through the center of the old neighborhood. The nearby Hyde Park Barracks was once used to house Sydney's convicts, but today the building serves as a museum, with exhibits that introduce visitors to the history of the modern city. After spending time in the Rocks, why not take the short ferry ride up the coast to Manly? Despite being just across the water from Sydney's busy center, Manly feels quite relaxed in comparison. The main beach draws swimmers and surfers, and the surrounding streets are lined with cafes and small stores.
最后，我们来复习今天课文里的单字文法。单字的部分有 opera 表示歌剧 ，district 名词表示地区区域，常常是指这种行政区啊，或者是商业区等等。exhibit 在这边当名词表示展览品、展览。Ferry 它表示渡轮、渡船 ，surround 动词表示环绕、围绕。那文法的部分，我们第一个学到 come to mind 是被想到、浮现在脑海。第二个学到 worth 它表示值得什么的、有什么价值的。常用到的句型是主词 be worth 加名词或动名词，表达值得怎么样、价值多少金额。第三个学到 date 当动词可以指推断点点点形成的时间，确定点点点的年代。要表达说某事始于什么，回溯至什么，可以用到下列的句型，就是主词 date back 加一段时间，或是主词 date back to 加过去时间点。好，那以上这节讲解，同学别走开，马上回来哦。
Welcome to Word Toss. Today, we're not just tossing balls. We're tossing words about occupations.
Here's how it works. One person throws the ball and says an occupation word, like teacher, and the other must catch it and immediately say a related word.
If you drop the ball or say the wrong thing, game over.
Think you can survive a minute of word tossing?
Let's go. All right, I'll go first. Ready?
Let's do this.
Teacher.
Homework. Doctor.
Hospital. Chef.
Ooh. Restaurant. Pilot.
Airplane. Singer.
Microphone. Police officer.
Criminal. Farmer.
Crops. Basketball? Wait,
that's not an occupation.
I blanked out. I was thinking of player, but I said that sport instead.
Oh, so close. Athlete would have worked for you too, but looks like I win this round. Woohoo!
Oh no, I totally changed the subject there. My bad.
Well, at least you've already got a word ready for when we do play the sports edition.
True. So, how many occupation words did you catch?
If it wasn't that many, don't worry. Practice makes perfect. Keep tossing words and you'll get better each time.
See you next time on Word Toss.